Hey everybody, welcome back to Elfbait. This is Eli, and today I'm going to continue my series on the games I have played. I've played a lot of games in my days, and some of them I still play, some of them I don't have an opportunity to play, some of them just kind of have fallen by the wayside and may not even be worth playing anymore. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorites that I kind of keep coming back to and wistfully thinking about playing someday, and that is this little gem. This is Justifiers. Justifiers is an RPG that came out in 1988. It was written by Gideon and James Persham. Now, who those guys are and where they are in the industry today, I couldn't tell you. I just don't follow that stuff all that well myself. But this is a science fiction game that came out in the late 80s, obviously, and it has a lot of the themes that were common then, corporate rule and kind of that, where are we going from here, this sort of a thing. But it bundles that with this interesting take on planetary exploration. So, in Justifiers, you are playing teams of explorers, Justifiers, and you are tasked with going to alien planets and making the initial survey of those planets. Now, you're not doing this through big star cruisers and tricorders and Starship Enterprise type things. Star Trek Enterprise. Boy, believe me, trust me, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. I'm not some noob when it comes to Trek stuff. But this is not Trek. In Justifiers, you're dealing with a pretty low-tech angle towards science fiction. So much so that you get a story where the ability to go interstellar comes on early enough to where the rest of our tech really hasn't caught up with it. But we can only go interstellar in a limited fashion. we have transmat gates, and they can only be created within up to a certain area, and only for so long before they go unstable, and then everything goes horribly wrong. They explode catastrophically. So to do so, it requires a team of men and a shuttle that can fit in that portal, and transmat's one way. You go through the transmat, there's not another transmat on the other side. You're literally getting shot across space. So you get shot to a planet, you land on the planet, you have to explore the planet. Now, the exploration missions can be anything depending, as varied as you can think of scientifically or even fantastically for planets. The game does have an allowance for alien life forms. There is the Aboriginal source book, which actually details several existing species out there that we've already made contact with and conflict with. So that is the setting. Who are the characters? The characters in Justifiers, like I mentioned, are these explorers, but they're not voluntary. Every character in this game starts out as some sort of property. Now, that may seem like a very objectionable theme, but it goes along with that whole concept of corporate rule. This game is actually built on quite a few concepts that modern gaming might look on a little shyly, but you shouldn't. It's all part of the subtext for the game, and it's not glorifying it, and it's certainly not rationalizing it or anything like that. It's just part of the backdrop. So you have 4 main races in the game. You have humans, and you have augmented humans, which are basically super soldiers, and high G humans, who are heavy gravity workers. The newest ones on the scene, though, are betas. And if you look at the cover of this, you'll see humanoid animals. Those are betas. Those are beta class life forms, and beta class life forms are genetic fusions between human and animals. Now, and when I say animals, I mean animals, not just mammals, but also reptiles, and insects are also hybridized. You have mantis humanoids, and the idea being that humanity is looking to get the most bang for their buck. So they're getting these animal features, the animal capabilities, along with human intelligence. They've tried robots, those didn't work. They tried intelligent animals, the alphas, those didn't work. Augmented humans were problematic when they were done as soldiers, and so augmenting humans was kind of stopped or frowned upon. So they have betas now. Well, betas are property. They've been grown by the corporation and are owned. Humans and augmented humans and zero-G humans are generally more of a contractual obligation, or you may have had your sentence purchased by the corporation. Augmented humans often run afoul of the law, and that is fertile pickings for greedy corporations who want to take people who've shown skill and training. Augmented humans, like I mentioned, they're kind of super soldiers, and humans, you might be a criminal or something in your past, and so, you might be stealthy, or you know what, you could just be a piece of meat who they can put some training on and then, get you onto another planet. So that's the setting. Your character, the players have to go to these planets. They have to land on them. They have to explore them. There are some complications. Like I said, it's a one-way trip. Your shuttle is there to get you onto the planet and land you safely. After that, it doesn't have the ability to fly around the planet or anything. The shuttle does carry other vehicles depending on your mission, but the shuttle itself becomes a base of operations. It has very limited fuel stores and maneuverability in the atmosphere. It can basically pick a landing spot and that's it. Once it's landed, it really isn't going to do you much good other than being a place to hide when giant gorillas attack you. So, then, you spend some time on the planet. You have to spend time on the planet because while you are given a return gate, you have to construct that gate, and it won't activate until after a certain amount of time. So, and this is a precaution that the corporations put in place to make sure that their investment doesn't just run away. Because once you're on that other planet, you're self-governing. You're kind of supervising yourself. So in the time frame that you have between when you land and when the gate is active, that's when the adventure occurs. Now, this could be one adventure. This could be multiple adventures. You can run a mini campaign. The game lends really well to one-shots as well as short campaigns. You could do longer campaigns. Like, we had a game where our transmat was damaged, and so we were stuck. We had to wait till the follow-up mission to basically find out what happened to us occurred. And that's like a month or something like that. 2 months. Can't remember what it is off the top of my head. It's in here. But yeah, so you were stuck. And so that's where the adventure comes from. You're exploring the planet, you're dealing with life forms, alien artifacts, alien cultures, that's all there. So, mechanically speaking, this game is a percentile system. Attributes and skills are all expressed in percentiles that are rolled on 2d10. Damage is generally handled through d6. Multiple d6 is usually rolled for damage. You roll attributes and modify them based on your species. A couple key notes in here I do like is that they delineate between dexterity and agility. So dexterity is your ability to manipulate things, and agility is your ability to move your whole body. There's also a presence stat, which, while for most people is just a measure of their personality, it can also end up being a measure of your psychic potential, because this game, like many games from the 80s and earlier, likes psionics. So there is psionics in it. There are also cybernetics, because it's the late 80s and everything was about cybernetics. We had RoboCop, and we had Cyberpunk, and we had William Gibson, and we had Hardwired and Neuromancer and all that stuff. And, Johnny Mnemonic. Cybernetics was the thing. It was in vogue. We had Boomers. We had all of that going on. So cybernetics also factors in here. In fact, there's a supplement called the Medtech sourcebook. I don't have a physical copy because all my original books are gone. These are all ones I picked up on the secondary market after the fact. In fact, the ones I'm holding here are the sum total of what I have. There's probably a good 4, 5, 6 other books that I still have yet to pick up. They're all available on DriveThruRPG though, so you can get them in PDF format. But the original physical books, which I absolutely have to have, are not. They're only available in the secondary market. So you roll your stats, and then you also have some calculated stats. Now these are derived from formulas based on your other stats. Usually your hit points, your damage, your base damage, your base skill roll. This is a nice thing. So everybody has like a basic skill capability. And it's kind of that I think is determined by your intelligence, which is neat. And so once you have your attributes figured out, it is a classless system. You then are given, you pick a area, whether that's sciences, field operations, or technical. And then you pick a specialty. There are 3 specialties under sciences. There's like, I think, planetary, life, and social. And then there are 2 specialties under engineering. There's mechanical and electrical. And then the field operatives, you have security, pilot, Medtech, and oh Lord, I'm gonna have to look it up. I am perpetually ill prepared. So yes, just a moment. So for field operatives, you have pilot, security, field doctor, and scout. And then you have cross-training. This is neat, and cross-training is key to mention here. Your mission crew is all there is. So the party that if you have a standard-sized gaming group, that's usually going to be the entirety of the crew. If you have a smaller group, it's going to be they're going to be the majority of the crew with a couple of NPCs, but that's it. So cross-training is important. I advise, even if you have a pilot in the group, make sure somebody else can pilot. Because if your pilot dies and you don't have another pilot, while anybody can try anything, you're really out of luck skill-wise. Not to mention some of those other mission-critical skills, some of the sciences can come into play. When you're on an alien planet and you get bit by that thing on that tree and you need to figure out how to deal with the toxin, you're going to need a medical tech. And there are also elective skills. These are things you pick up on the fly, pick up on the side that express kind of what your character does when he's not justifying. Now, here's the big kicker. Those attributes, and to a degree those skills and those special abilities you have for being a rhinoceros or an augmented human or whatever, those are all tallied together and total up to create your buyback. And this is the big kick in the teeth for all characters and justifiers. You are all property, and your buyback is what you have to pay off through your earnings on these missions, because while you are property, the society as a whole does not accept the ownership of life forms, even those that are actually manufactured by the corporations. And while the trade authority is the central governing body, they had to bow to social pressure, and so you all contracted and created species have a buyback. They have the ability to pay off their contract or pay off the investment in their creation and become free beings. Now, there's a bit of a trick to that, because every mission you go on, you have expenses. Those expenses are weighed against your overall mission payout. And so you may look at a big payout and then slowly but surely see it ticked down as the corporation makes you pay for every last bit of equipment that you lost on that mission. In addition, willful destruction of property, which is a very subjective term, can be directly applied to your buyback. If you crash that helicopter and you did it on purpose, like you suicided the helicopter into something, they're likely going to apply the entirety of the cost of that helicopter to your buyback. But once you're free, you can continue to work for the corporation, which many betas and augmented humans do, because it's kind of a I don't have anywhere else to go kind of a thing, or this is what I do. You can continue working for them, and then you're just making cash. The game also, interestingly enough, has a stock market element to it. In the corporate sourcebook, I hate the pink cover. They changed it later, but all I could find is the pink cover. Corporate sourcebook has actually has rules for playing the stock market in here, so you can actually invest in corporations and earn money for your character, because that's kind of cool. In addition to the betas, there are also gammas and exotic betas. Gammas are weird hybrids. All betas can crossbreed no matter what their parent species is, because of some genetic trick that occurred in their creation. And so usually what you end up with is, if they have offspring, you have usually it's multiple births and there's one of each creature, but occasionally you'll have a hybrid. So you might have a rhino squirrel. These things are incredibly valuable. Even when they are funky, the corporations place a high value on them. And so these gammas, if they're born to betas that are still owned, they're considered corporate property. And so they are then given a buyback as well. and that buyback is huge because they're exotic. They're one-offs. And then you have the exotic betas. Now the exotic betas are kind of a weird trick because what's happened is the corporations have gone out and they've gone to other planets, they've found other species, they've started tinkering with those other species to create alien animal human hybrids. So you might have some weird beast from another planet that they've now hybridized. And so those guys are actually classed in the same place as gammas because they're so rare and valuable. I mentioned earlier psionics and cybernetics are a big thing. There's actually a source book that I do not have a physical copy of, so I can't show you the cover. But it's the Medtech source book. There's a corporation called Medtech, and it expands greatly the cybernetics and the psionic rules. It actually has a separate character sheet to add to your character that is body location, so you can write down all your augmentations. So that's the system, that's the character generation. Game mechanically, the system skills are pretty straightforward. There's a difficulty, you have to beat it. Or actually, you have to roll. Basically, you're rolling your skill percentage all the time, and then your skills total percentage is modified by the difficulty. So, if you have 75% in your biology skill, the GM can decide that this is a particularly weird life form, and it is going to be tricky to figure out what it is, and you can apply like a 10 or 15, minus 10, minus 15 penalty to that, and so now it's you're going to be functioning at 65 or 60 as your percentage, and you still have to roll equal to or under that. Typical percentile rolls. Combat is a little weird in that they break it into two parts. You have a missile combat section and a melee combat section, and missile combat happens first and then it goes to melee. They both have different subsystems in them, which is kind of weird. And then it's usually opposed rolls. For shooting, you're firing at a target. That target has the option to dodge. In melee, it's melee skill versus melee skill, and there's this kind of mashup. So the game is fun to play. I mean, I very much enjoyed my time playing it. I think it is a great game for today's gaming environment where people have a lot less time and where games are also sometimes played online. Like I mentioned earlier, it lends really well to one-shots. A mission to a planet. You play for one afternoon, and whatever happens in that afternoon is what happens, and then you narrate the rest of it. It also lends well to mini campaigns where you don't have to have a long extended campaign. And also, it's built perfectly for character replacement. There can often be a little bit of a hang-up in some games where after you lose your character, how do you get your other character in? Well, in this one, you just write up another character. All right, here's the replacement for Bob the Bear. Now we have Walter the Wolf, who's going to come in and be the new character. You could run multiple characters. It could be that you run a couple of different specialists and you pick and choose which character you're playing based on mission. It's totally doable. Your XP is going to be divvied out, but it allows some flexibility. If I were to run it today, I think I would do two things to really make it work. If I didn't replace the system altogether, I would modify the action system to where we didn't have the divided melee, missile melee. I would have one combat round with an action count where you just, each character gets 2 actions or whatever, and then they operate within that. I think that would be fine, and I would find some sort of... I would work it to where the system was very clean. Like, it's just one set of rules. The other thing I would do, too, is I think I would update a lot of the technology. The game is written in the 80s, and so there are some concepts in today's world that are just so common that aren't even hinted at. There's not a drone in the book. You can bet we would have drones on exploration. Robots are not in the game. Not even simple robots. And I can imagine a simple robot being there. I might avoid robots simply because I don't want to necessarily make it too easy for the players. But having limited use robots might be useful. And by robot, I don't mean like autonomous things, or if they are autonomous, they're operating very simply. No C-3POs, no R2-D2s, but definitely like, a remote manipulator drone. And, maybe not even an actual robot, just an extended tool like a drone where, you have a character operating it. Some of the vehicles could probably use some updating. The game still has helicopters in it. And while helicopters are pretty simple, straightforward technology, I think turbofans and VTOLs and stuff are a little bit more apropos for a future setting. I wouldn't go so far as to put like grav vehicles or anything in there. I don't think the weapons need much changing. The weapons there's a lot of different kinds of weapons in them, but in the game they're really loosely defined. You have assault rifle, but it doesn't get into the specifics. You have light, heavy, and medium rifles. You have light, medium, and heavy pistols. There are particle beam guns. There are stun guns. I might borrow some weapons that are in other games simply because they're favorites of mine. For example, there's no gyrojets in the game. I always like gyrojets. It's a leftover from Star Frontiers. There are no Tangler grenades. I always liked Tangler grenades from Star Frontiers, and those would certainly fit. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? It's a game about playing an animal hybrid or some other funky space guy, and then you could play humans in it. If hybrid animals aren't your thing, don't play one. Play an augmented human or a human. I think when they created the game, they were very careful to make sure that there was options. So speaking of other things that you could expand on, there are options. You could expand this to include other forms of augmented humans. We have high G humans. What about zero G humans or low G humans? Now, certainly they're going to be at a penalty on a planet, and they might have to wear like a frame or something around to function in atmosphere. But, why not? Specialty life forms. We're talking about a corporate world. What about escort augments? Remember Pris from Blade Runner? She was a replicant, but she wasn't a combat model. She was, they called her the pleasure model. While I wouldn't expect to throw a character in like that for that to be their day job in the game, that's what they were. Just like an augmented human used to be a super soldier, now he's a corporate tool. Just so this escort augment, maybe he or she ran afoul of the law, and they are now, heck, it's an escort model. Maybe it's not even a he or she specifically. Maybe it's both, whatever. But the point is, this augment may have run afoul of the law. Maybe they're looking to get out of the life. Maybe, whatever explanation, you could create other forms of exotic life, brawler augments. You're augmented human. Maybe you're playing an augmented human, but maybe that augmented human wasn't a soldier. Maybe that augmented human was a sports player or a gladiator. There is the Silent Corporation in here, which is a criminal underground. Who knows what kind of experiments they're getting up to? Companies like Medtech, who are trying to push the limits of medicine and augmentation. What are they creating? Maybe a cyborg character is an option. You get funky and go Jurassic Park. Maybe there's a company doing weird archaeotech and they're resurrecting, saber-toothed tigers and T-Rexes and velociraptors and ankylosauruses and creating these other betas. Now those guys are probably going to be cast right up there with the gammas and the other exotics because they're going to be rare things, but you could have fun with that. It could be a weird thing. Maybe they're illegal. Maybe they're only the purview of the Silent Corporation, or maybe heavy duties like that are only found in the Ares Marines or under the direct authority of the Terran Trade Authority. Maybe, but they wouldn't necessarily have to be. Maybe you have a specific corporation that does that. Like I mentioned, maybe some corporation is doing the archaeotech. The game is really cool in that respect. It's science fiction. It can get as weird and wild as you want. There are alien civilizations in the game. There is this whole thread of freedom for the betas. There are beta colonies and stuff. You could definitely do a lot with this game. If you happen to head on over to Drive-Thru RPG, pick up the PDFs, give it a whirl, see how it goes. I mean, it's definitely worth a try. You may want to look at reskinning it. If anything, steal the setting. I've actually thought about integrating Justifiers with some of the stuff from Blue Planet, and I'll talk about Blue Planet some other time, but they kind of have similar themes in a lot of respects. But so yeah, this was me talking about another game that I play, Justifiers. If you have questions or comments, put them on down below. I'd be happy to answer them for you. If you want to, if you're looking to maybe play this, let me know. If you do play this, let me know. Heck, I'd love to get in on a game. Like, share, and subscribe. It always helps me out. Appreciate that. You can email me over at baittheelf@gmail.com. There's an Elfbait Facebook group, and there's also me, Elfbait, at Twitter. So, appreciate you checking it out and taking this trip down memory lane. And as always, get out and game.